I noticed the wrong name on a receipt first. It was a folded square of thermal paper tucked under the visor of our Subaru, a habit of mine since college. I clean the car when I'm waiting, when I'm anxious, when I'm pretending I'm not. The receipt was for 2 martinis and a dessert at a place downtown we'd never go. Too sleek, too loud, the kind of place with chairs that make you sit up straighter. The bartender had scribbled a curve of ink at the bottom. "Thank you, Michael." My husband's name is Evan. I stared long enough that the letters deepened. The ink lifted off the paper in my mind and branded the word onto the windshield. Michael. I said it aloud once, soft, like I might scare it away. The syllables didn't fit the car or the used baby seat scuffed with cracker dust, or our key on its keychain with the chipped enamel rose. Michael didn't belong to our grocery list stuck to the fridge with a magnet that says, "There's no place like home." And yet he was here, neat at the bottom of a $37.58 receipt for 2 martinis and 1 shared creme brulee, a burned sugar crust, a spoon clinking. I slid the receipt into my wallet and pressed it flat behind my driver's license. I didn't tell myself a story or make a plan. I only felt the new words settle into my body like a pebble in a shoe, small, irritating, impossible to ignore the longer you walk. I drove to pick up our daughter from preschool, and while she sang about ducks and rain, I heard a different chorus looping quietly under my skin. "Thank you, Michael." What did the bartender know that I didn't?
We chose Portland because we believed in fresh starts. After my mother died, I needed a city with rain that washes everything. Evan said he needed somewhere that didn't smell like the hospital where he'd done his residency, somewhere where the hills made you feel like turning a corner was an act of hope, a place where our daughter, Nora, would learn trees by name. We had been, for a long time, a reasonable marriage, not fireworks, not ruin. He worked long hours as a hospitalist. I managed a small design studio out of a shared office above a cafe. At night, we ate late dinners, shared data plans and inside jokes, and stacked our calendars like bricks. We did the obvious things, the small rituals that seem flimsy until you realize they are the only architecture you've got. Tuesday pasta, Saturday laundry, a kiss on the way to the garage even if you're late. You build a life out of wood and time and what you believe to be true. If there were warning signs, I misread them as weather. He'd always been composed, careful, the kind of man who ironed his shirts on Sunday nights. He had a calm voice that patients adored and a habit of labeling spice jars in tidy block letters. When he was home, he was present. When he wasn't, he sent photos of hospital sunsets that looked like somebody had bruised the sky. We had a drawer we called the everything drawer, measuring tape tangled with orphaned keys, sunscreen, a deck of cards, spare chargers. Sometimes I think that drawer was the truest map of us, useful, messy, full of things we never questioned. And maybe even then, under the tape measure's curl, a name I didn't know was already coiled, waiting. If he was Michael, too, how long had I been living with a stranger?
The second slip came a week later, a thin, cream-colored envelope stuck between our utility bills. The return address was a logo of a cursive M inside a circle. Inside was a handwritten note on thick paper that smelled faintly like a lemon office cleaner. "Michael, Thursday, 7 p.m., reservation under M. I'll bring the wine if you bring that story about your ridiculous neighbor. A." I didn't look at it. I listened. Paper can make a sound just for you. The scratch of the pen, casual, familiar. The joke about a story I'd never heard him tell. I pressed my thumb into the signature until the ink smudged faintly. My pulse did the small, hard flutter I get on narrow bridges, like the water below has a magnet. I tucked the note back into the envelope and slid it under the stack of sushi menus and old birthday cards we never mailed. My hands were steady. My breathing wasn't. I sent a text. "Hey, what's your schedule like Thursday? Thinking of grabbing tacos with Nora." He replied with a blue dot and a sentence that trod carefully among apologies. Thursday, I'm on late admits. Don't wait up. A lie is only a lie when someone knows the truth. Until then, it's a performance, and the audience doesn't even realize they've bought a ticket. I had bought 1,000 tickets without reading the marquee. I am not by nature a snoop. I am a designer. I make order around truths. But once you name the thing you're looking for, a pattern glows. I went backward, scrolling through charges, looking at the little map pins of his credit card statements. The same sleek restaurant appeared twice more in the past month. A hotel bar I didn't recognize, a florist tucked under a bridge on the east side, a boutique that sells silk things for bodies that want to be looked at. In his desk, the drawer where he kept pens in a perfect line, I found a second wallet. Not hidden, not announced, just there, matte black, with 2 cards and a driver's license facing outward. The face was my husband's, the name was Michael Hale. The address was not ours. A loft building near the water, a place with big windows and concrete floors that stain when you cry. I sat on the floor because the room tilted. People think the worst pain is sharp. It isn't. It's the slow ache of rearranging what you know. It's picking up the house you live in and shaking it and watching what falls out of the walls. I memorized the address the way you memorize a 7th grade locker combination. Hungrily, terrified you'll forget, shaking anyway. I put everything back. I ran hot water until the bathroom filled with steam and stood in it until my skin flushed. When the mirror cleared, my face looked exactly the same. It felt like a betrayal. I had opened a door. My hand was still on the knob. Behind it, the other life. Did it smell different over there? The loft had a lobby with a plant so tall it needed a leash. On Thursday, at 6:40 p.m., I pushed the glass door and felt the temperature change, from sidewalk warm to a cool that hummed with money. The concierge glanced up, then down at a list. I carried a confidence I didn't own and said, "Michael's expecting me." I let the sentence float like a keycard might. "Penthouse, elevator on the right," she said, without surprise. Maybe I sounded like someone who belongs everywhere. The penthouse door was slightly ajar, as if air leaves differently in places that high. Inside, white walls, concrete floors, a couch like a low cloud, a black piano, gleaming. Books arranged by color, by the inch, by someone who curated lives for a living. And a photograph face down on the console, as if modesty had rules here. I didn't touch anything for a full minute. I listened. The apartment hummed with the same mild wealth as the lobby. Then I turned the photograph over. It caught my reflection first. Then it sharpened into 3 people at a winery, vine rows behind them, afternoon light made of honey. Michael, my husband, in a navy shirt, his arm around a woman whose cheek pressed hard into his shoulder. The woman's hair was dark, glossy, her smile was wide and familiar in the way of faces you've seen on billboards. A third woman stood on the other side, a precise blonde with lipstick the color of plums. They were dressed casually, but the casual that takes hours. On the back, 2M and A, best weekend, L. I checked the cabinets. Wine glasses turned upside down, stems like wrists. Plates we would never buy. In the bedroom closet, a row of dresses. Sizes I could zip, styles I would never pick. Nail polish lined up like a jelly bean spectrum. In the bathroom, his cologne, but softer. A hairbrush with a few dark strands. 1 toothbrush. When I heard the elevator, my hands went cold. He stepped in a moment later. Late summer light framed him, a bag slung across his shoulder, his face in that open, mild arrangement I had loved first because it promised safety. He saw me. Surprise. Then calculation. A blink, a rearrangement, a smile born of fear. "Jules," he said. He never calls me Juliet when he needs me to forgive him. What are you doing here?" I held up the driver's license with the other name. "Meeting Michael. He sounds interesting." He set the bag down carefully, like it contained explosives. "I can explain." I didn't say you can't explain. I didn't say anything at all. Silence is a shape you can make if you need to feel powerful. He filled it with words anyway. and everyone rearranged another room in my head. He told me the story like a doctor delivering a diagnosis he'd rehearsed, measured, without adjectives, leaving spaces between sentences for me to nod. Michael was his middle name, he said. When he moved to Portland, he used it at the hospital for a while because there were already 3 Evans on his floor. It started as a practical convenience, then became a convenience of a different kind. The loft was a sublet. Temporary, he said, with this soft way you say temporary about things you'd keep forever if no one stopped you. The women? Not many, he said, not at once. He said it like he was classifying butterflies. A was Alina, a publicist, sometimes in San Francisco, who made him feel less like a doctor and more like a person who might play the piano that he did not actually know how to play. L was Lara, a photographer who liked the way he tilted his head when he listened. The stories he told them were, he insisted, lightly edited. He said it like he was sanding down a rough edge for safety. He didn't say what he told them about me. He didn't need to. Why? He said he didn't know how to say, I needed to feel like not just the man who brings discharge papers and kills his appetite with coffee. He said it with the kind of softness men use when they want you to hold their weakness for them. He said feeling like a different person gave him a different oxygen. He said when he walked out of the loft, he could breathe in a way he couldn't at home, not because of me, he promised, never because of me. I never meant to hurt you, he said, the dirtiest cliché. I looked at the piano. The lid was glossy enough to show me a second version of myself upside down. I wanted to ask if any of them had ever tapped those keys. I wanted to ask why the toothbrush count didn't add up. I wanted to use every minute of the past to indict every minute of the present. Instead, I touched the corner of the winery photo again and asked a different question. How many names do you think a person can wear at once before they disappear? He flinched. Jules? Do Alina and Lara know each other? I asked, because I needed angles, not empathy. I needed a blueprint for the house that had become a maze. He said, no, quickly, too quickly. What story do you tell when the stories collide? I asked. He looked toward the door as if the elevator might bring a script. They won't, he said. I've kept it separate. The intercom buzzed. He closed his eyes like prayer. There was a small screen by the door. On it, a woman in a trench coat, dark hair pinned into a knot so clean it made me want to stand up straighter. She held a bottle of wine like an offering. Her lips moved. I couldn't hear her, but even without sound, the shape of my name formed in my mouth the way you shape a curse. Alina. I knew it in my bones. I could smell lemon cleaner and a press photo in motion. Don't, Evan said, his hand lifting, as if my body were a piano lid he could close. I pressed the button because I wanted light in the room where the truth lived. When Alina walked in, she carried a scent that made the air feel taller. She looked at me, then at him, a calculation flicking across her features like a shadow of a bird you don't see again. She smiled at me with professional warmth. Hi, She paused, a pivot visible. A friend. Juliet, I said. His wife. The word wife in a cool room makes the temperature drop 10 degrees. She didn't gasp, it was worse. She nodded. A small, precise nod like an executive sealing a deal. I wondered, she said. She set the wine on the counter and looked at Evan, who had taken half a step toward the door, as if he might turn and walk out of his own mess. You said you were going to tell her. He began. You weren't. She cut in, the tiniest arch to her left eyebrow. She looked at me again. I'm sorry. You deserved the truth sooner. Thank you, I said, because my mother taught me to mind my mouth even when my heart is mud. How long? A year, she said. Then a beat, a clean incision. He told me his marriage was an arrangement that had become routine. I felt the word arrangement like a cold spoon pressed to a tooth. My marriage is a life. With a child. Child, she repeated quietly. She flicked her gaze toward Evan again, a new animal crossing the scene. Disgust. You didn't tell me that. Alina, he said soft. I was going to. You weren't. She cut in, the tiniest arch to her left eyebrow. She looked at me again. I'm sorry. You deserved the truth sooner. Thank you, I said, because my mother taught me to mind my mouth, even when my heart is mud. The intercom buzzed again. Your day planner is very brave, I said. This time the screen showed the blonde, lipstick precise, eyes steady. She didn't carry wine, she carried a small camera bag and a bouquet of tulips, which looked cheaply beautiful, the way tulips always do on the first day you buy them. I pressed the button again. Of course, Alina murmured. Laura stepped in and stopped. She saw me, her eyes ran a quick math problem. Wife is X, husband is Y, Z is humiliation. She set the tulips on the island and took a slow breath. I told you Thursdays are my nights, Laura said to him, not angry, not anything, which was somehow worse. I told both of you I was ending things, he said. Alina laughed, low and surprised. You can't end a thing that's never fully begun. Laura looked at me. I'm sorry. She looked back at him. Do you want to tell us who you are today? He didn't answer fast enough. He put his hand on the counter like a man steadying himself on a railing when the boat shifts. The room tilted. I pulled my phone from my bag, not to record, though a darker part of me hummed at the thought, but to anchor my hands. The screen lit my face in blue. My reflection looked like a stranger's. Here's what happens next, I heard myself say, and realized I had been stitching the plan together from the minute I saw his other name. The next week smelled like paperwork. I called a lawyer whose office framed her diplomas in heavy wood that looked like old courtroom pews. I told her everything, in a voice that belonged to a woman on a podcast. Clear, measured, cutting where it needed to be. She said words I had avoided knowing. Separation, custody, financial disclosures, mediation. She said them kindly. She asked if I felt safe. I did, which felt like another betrayal in a story full of gentler betrayals. He had never raised his voice. He had only raised a world next to ours. At home, I moved their rooms like a surveyor, tagging things with meaning. The couch, ours. The books with notes in the margins, mine. The spice jars with tidy block letters, his. The plant in the kitchen that refuses to die even when you forget to water it, ours, because stubbornness belongs to both of us. Nora didn't ask questions I couldn't answer yet. She only asked if the library lady would still give her a sticker even if she whispered. I told her yes. I made pancakes in the wrong pan and they tasted like rubber. I threw them out and made more. The second batch tasted like mercy. Evan stayed at the loft. He sent long apologies formatted like medical notes. Objective, subjective, plan. He sent links to couples therapists the way frantic men send flowers. He said he would sign anything I needed. He said he would be present for Nora. He said he understood if I hated him. He just didn't want us to disappear. The first night without him, the house felt like it was holding its breath. The second night, it exhaled a little. On the third night, I found myself humming while I folded laundry. A stupid little melody my mother used to hum when she found relief in quantity. The comfort of parallel pairs of socks. Relief is its own grief. In the mornings, I ran. I am not a runner by nature. I am a runner when I cannot sit with myself. The city smelled like wet cotton and coffee. I ran past the hospital more than once. I tried not to look up at the windows that could have framed him, the soft posture he gets when he listens to someone older than him describe pain. I tried not to remember that he is good at work. Monsters are obvious. Men like him are complicated. Loving them is like trying to hold a glass of water while walking across a room during an earthquake. Alina texted me. I ended it. If you need anything, information, receipts, ask. I stared at those words like they were a foreign alphabet and answered with the only sentence that didn't make me feel more broken. I need you to forget my number. Laura didn't text. One day a package arrived at the studio, a small, square envelope with no return address.
Inside was a printed photo of tulips, half open, shot in gentle light. On the back, in tiny letters, "For spring." I set it on my desk and didn't cry, and then did. Every day I discovered another tiny lie that had made a small, precise cut over time. A jacket I'd never seen, because he left it at the hospital. A restaurant he never liked, that he'd visited twice in 3 weeks. A certain way he massaged his left temple while making tea. Stress response, I thought. And now I could date the stress on a calendar of Thursdays with a reservation under M. Do you know the worst part? It wasn't the affair, or the second name, or the loft with the plant too tall for honesty. It was the way the story he told about himself had been so plausible for so long that I had let it tuck me in. Trust is a lullaby you hum to yourself because silence is louder. I changed the passcode on the garage. I moved the enamel rose keychain to a new ring. I learned I could shoulder a door and have it open.
The hospital called on a Tuesday, not a nurse or a scheduler, the chief medical officer. He asked if I had a minute to talk about Dr. Hale. Dr. Hale, the name he used in that other life. The CMO's voice was pared down like driftwood. He told me the hospital had been alerted to a conflict of interest complaint from a patient's family. They alleged that Dr. Hale had been involved with a relative of the patient, and that decisions about discharge timing had been influenced. It wasn't a legal accusation yet. It was an ethical flag, the kind that stains reputations even if it never touches a courtroom. The CMO said he was conducting an internal review. He asked if I could confirm anything that might clarify the situation. I pressed the phone between my ear and shoulder and looked out the studio window at a man parallel parking an oversized truck like a puzzle he had learned to love. The air in my mouth tasted like metal. I said I couldn't confirm. I said I was separated. I said I hoped the patients were okay. I hung up and felt the fat line between his lives thin. The floor creaked under a load it wasn't designed to handle. When I told Evan that night, because I refused to become the meanest version of myself by withholding mercy, he sat on our porch steps and put his hands on his knees. He didn't weep. He didn't beg. He asked for the name of a good lawyer. He looked at the Japanese maple we'd planted the year we moved in and said almost to himself, "I didn't think I could lose both." "Both what?" I asked, though I knew. "My family and my job," he said. You don't say to a drowning man that he should have learned to swim sooner. You throw him a rope if you can stand to. I sent him 3 names. I reminded him to go gentle with Nora's heart. He nodded, obedient. The most obedient he had been in months. That same week, Alina emailed me a copy of a message she'd sent to the hospital's ethics committee. She wrote about boundaries. She did not write about love. She didn't spare him, and she didn't savage him. It was almost worse. It was factual. Laura, it turned out, had taken photographs at a hospital fundraiser 6 months earlier. Her images had hung in a hallway that I'd once breathed in as if it were mine. Lives overlap even when you think you're keeping them separate. That's the math he failed at. I learned that truth can arrive by certified mail. Mediation was set for a Friday that felt like rain. We sat at a long table with vases of neutral flowers and drank water from sweating pitchers, while people with legal pads translated our pain into bullet points. Custody is a word that sounds like custody. It has bars. It has a schedule. It makes love a spreadsheet and asks you to sign here. He saw Nora Tuesdays and every other weekend, plus Wednesday dinners if call rotations allowed. We divided assets like adults who didn't want to embarrass themselves in front of strangers. The loft? Not ours to fight over. The Subaru? Mine. The retirement accounts? Halved and halved again by taxes. The house? Mine for now with a plan to refinance. I felt older every time someone slid paper toward me. But paper isn't the climax. The climax is bloodless only if you refuse to look down at your own open chest. The night before we would sign the final agreement, he texted, "Can I come by? Alone?" I stared at the words and then at my hands, which remembered his hands without asking permission. I said yes, because sometimes closure needs an audience. He stood in the doorway like a boy coming home after curfew.
He looked thin. The hospital had placed him on administrative leave pending the outcome of their review. He had moved out of the loft, the sublet was ending anyway. He had been sleeping on a mattress in a studio apartment that smelled like someone else's cooking. He said these things quietly, as if each word cost something. "I thought I could be two people," he said finally. "I thought that made me bigger. I didn't understand it made me less." I didn't say I had told him that with my eyes months ago. I didn't say I knew something about splitting because I had been doing it too. Wife and mother and woman and survivor and plaintiff and person who buys tulips anyway. I didn't say anything that would make either of us feel better too fast. "Why me?" I asked instead. "Why marry me at all if you wanted to keep trying on names like jackets?" He looked surprised, like he hadn't expected the most obvious question. He put his hands in his pockets the way he does when he thinks he needs to look less dangerous. "Because you are, the truest thing," he said. "I thought I could deserve you by collecting proof that other people wanted me too. I know how that sounds. I hate that it's true." The clock on the stove ticked one audible minute. The house smelled like dish soap. The Japanese maple made leaf shadows on the wall. I stood up and walked to the sink and turned the faucet on and off, because water is proof of control. When I turned around, he was closer. Not close enough to touch, close enough to hear him breathe. "Tell me what you want," he said. "I'll do it." The thing about that sentence is that it arrives too late almost every time. It's a bandage offered to a woman who has already stitched herself shut. We signed the papers the next day. The mediator made small talk about summer camps while we initialed our initials into being single. Afterward, in the parking lot, Evan reached for my shoulder in a gesture he had learned the first year we were together, when I cried during a thunderstorm because thunder sounded like my mother's last cough. His hand hovered, then dropped. He put it back in his pocket like a contraband he'd almost displayed. "I'm going to meetings," he said. I didn't ask what kind. Men like him prefer changing nouns to changing. "I'm selling the piano," he added, and this was the only sentence that made my throat move. "You never played," I said. "I tried," he said. "Once." He almost smiled. It sounded like a man lying. We stood there a moment longer, two people who had split a life, the pieces at our feet, some of them lovely, some of them ugly, all of them ours. Then I walked to my car. I drove to the river and parked. I watched a cargo ship move under the bridge like a patient animal. I cried for 10 minutes, the hard, efficient cry you save for bathrooms and cars. Then I called my studio and told them I'd be late, and I answered Nora's text about whether her stuffed rabbit could go to Dad's on Wednesday. I told her yes. I told her of course. I told her the truest thing I had left. You are loved more than any of this. On the way home, I stopped at the florist under the bridge. The woman behind the counter wrapped a bouquet of peonies in brown paper and tied it with twine. At the register, she said, "Name for the receipt?" For a second, I almost said Hail. The syllable was on my tongue, a ghost muscle memory. "Juliet," I said. My voice didn't shake. Just Juliet. You can rebuild a life like you renovate an old farmhouse, one room at a time, in shoes you can sweep in. I started small. I donated the mixing bowls we'd gotten for our wedding that were too big for anything but holidays. I painted the hallway a yellow that looked ridiculous at midnight and like sunrise in the morning. I let Nora pick stickers to put on the spice jars because labels can be rewritten without anyone bleeding. Tuesday pasta stayed Tuesday pasta. Saturday laundry stayed Saturday laundry. Some rituals survive even when the doorframes split. Sometimes, after I put Nora to bed, I stand on the back porch and listen to the city rinse itself. The hospital is aglow behind the trees. I think of the women whose names I now know and don't say. I think of the girl I was when I said yes to a man whose middle name would swallow him. I think of the person I am now, who arranges flowers on a table and eats breakfast beside them, even if they are wilting. Because wilted is still beautiful for a moment. I let myself feel sorry for the version of him that believed more names meant more selves. Then I take that pity back and fold it into a drawer where I keep extra batteries and a small hammer and a tape measure that tells me in inches what things really are. I am not ruined. I am not a better story now than I was before. I am simply awake inside my own name. The receipt in my wallet has faded until Michael looks like a water stain. I keep it anyway, not because I need proof, but because sometimes you need to remember the hour a house learned it was a maze and then learned the way out. On Thursdays, even now, I catch myself looking at the clock at 7 p.m. I don't picture a loft or a piano. I picture Nora's hands opening a jar she labeled cinnamon, spicy sweet, with a star sticker crooked, triumphant. I picture my front door with its sensible lock and the hook where I hang my keys. And when the house is quiet and the rain hits the gutter just right, and the fern by the sink breeze in that wet, grateful way, I hear the simplest music, a woman in her kitchen, humming her own name back to herself, steady, singular, and true.